down that here he is, world-renowned, galactically famous, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ellis!
Well, hello there. Oh my voice. One moment, please.
Hello there. Oh, my voice. That's still not right. One moment, please.
Well, hello there. Much better. My voice is now the way it should be. I had a problem. My voice was not correct, so I completed 2 easy steps to fix my problem. First, I cleared my throat. That did not finish fixing my problem, so I proceeded to a second easy step, drinking the magic stuff. Once I did that, my problem was solved. In the same way, perhaps you were asked to graph a line, or to identify the graph of a line, and yet you have a problem similar to mine, in that you have an equation written in standard form. Go ahead and write down standard form on your notes. I will give you a moment to do so.
Ten minutes later.
Okay, now we can proceed. So you'll notice that this is in standard form. Hopefully we talked about that yesterday. Standard form is something that I can graph on a line if I were to find the intercepts, but that feels like a lot of work. In fact, sometimes it is. And so there's an easier way to graph a line, a tool that we have learned in the past that we can use to graph lines in a much simpler fashion. That tool is called slope-intercept form. It's one of your favorites. Let's write that down next to the standard form in our notes. Y equals mx plus b. Now that's slope-intercept form. It's really good at graphing. If I were to have that, I could graph my line very easily. Unfortunately, I have a problem. I have a standard form instead. Wouldn't it be nice if I could take my standard form and then change it so that it looked like this instead of this? Wouldn't that make graphing much easier?
Yeah.
Why, yes. Yes, it would. Thanks for your participation. So what we're going to learn today is how to take this and change it into this in 2 easy steps. Just like it takes 2 easy steps for me to fix my voice, so too can you change standard form to slope-intercept form in 2 easy steps. Let's get started. Oh, it's going to be really hard to complete this whole video with this type of energy, but I'm going to do it. So let's look over here on the edge where it says converting standard form to slope-intercept form, and let's write down the 2 easy steps that we're going to use to solve our problem. The first thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be getting our marker so that I can write things on the board. Once I do that, we're going to write down step 1 is to add or subtract the AX term to move it to the other side. Let's just write that down first, and then I'll show you an example. Go ahead and write that down now. Okay, now that you've done that, let's skip number 1 for now, and let's mosey on over to number 2 instead. So as you notice on this one, I have 4x plus 5y equals negative 30. Now I'd like to change this to slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. To do so, I'm first going to identify my AX term, meaning the x as well as any number that's connected with the x. And I'm going to move it to the other side of the equal sign. As we've known from the day 1, or basically week 1 at least, of our time together, we know that we can do that using opposite operations. In this case, the 4x is positive. So I'm going to subtract it from both sides, like this. Minus 4x, minus 4x. Now I do that because the minus 4x's are going to cancel each other out. which leaves me with a 5y on this side of the equal sign. And then on the other side, what you'll see is you have a negative 30 and a negative 4x. Now let's remember something. These two things are not like terms. The negative 30 is just a negative 30. We call that a constant. The negative 4x has an x term with it. So we can't just combine like terms. That's something that's going to happen every time we do this. We're never ever going to be able to mix those things together. So actually, even easier than doing so, we're just going to tag them together. Now, because y equals mx plus b typically has the x part in the front, right? It's mx and then a plus b. We're going to do the same thing here, where I take that negative 4x and I make that the first part of this. And then I take this negative 30 and I make that the second part of this, negative 30. So what I've done is I took what I started with, 4x plus 5y equals negative 30. And I just simply took that 4x and moved it to the other side of the equal sign. However, when I do so, you have to do so using the opposite operations. See how I started with a 4x on the left, and now I have a negative 4x on the right? That's because when I move it to the other side, we had to do the opposite. We had to subtract it. Because there was no like terms to subtract it to, we just kind of tacked it in there with the negative 30 that was already there. It is a little bit weird that we put the negative 4x as our first part on the right-hand side, but that's just because we're trying to keep it to look like y equals mx plus b. So the first step that we'll always do when we do this process is we're going to take that x term and we're going to move it to the other side using opposite operation. That's why I put plus or. I just realized I forgot to put the minus. I don't want to redo this, so we're just going to carry on. Plus or minus, the ax term to the other side. If it's a positive ax term, we're going to have to subtract it, and if it's negative, we're going to have to add it. We'll see an example of that here in a minute. Now, the second way that we're going to finish doing this is we're going to, I'll do that in a different color just to make things a little easier for us.
Thanks so much.
There we go. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to get rid of this 5. That's called the coefficient. It's the number that's in front of the variable. And the way that we're going to be getting rid of that coefficient every time we do this is we're going to divide. Because you notice how these two things are right next to each other? Well, we want to subtract, or we want to do the opposite of that. Sorry. Subtraction. Silly. Not that. We want to do the opposite of multiply, which is divide. So I'm going to, step 2, divide everything I just went over that line. This is really low quality. I should probably redo this, but I'm not going to. Divide everything by the coefficient, which in this case is the b term, by. So in order to do so, I'm just going to divide by 5 here. Just going to get rid of it. And then you always want to do the same thing to the other side of the equation as well. So we're also going to divide all of this by 5. Now notice I said everything. I put it in all caps and I ruined everything by, everything. Get it? Ruined everything with everything. I put it in all caps because this is the part that a lot of people miss. When I'm dividing by 5 on this other side, I've got to divide all of it by 5. That means I've got to divide the negative 4x and the negative 30. Now, sometimes when you divide, you're going to get a nice, pretty, beautiful whole number, but other times you won't. And if we don't, we're just going to leave it as a fraction. So when I do so, I'm going to have y equals, because those 5's canceled, right? And the first piece I have is a negative 4x divided by 5. Negative 4x divided by 5, that's not a pretty fraction. That's not going to work out as something that's beautiful and pretty. So we're just going to leave it as a negative 4x over 5. Or negative 4 over 5x. That would have been the better way to write that. I'll put my little x down at the bottom. Negative 4 over 5x. It means the same thing, but it's probably a prettier way for you to talk about it. Should probably edit that part out. Not gonna keep moving. The other thing that we're going to need to divide is negative 30 over 5. Right, so we just divided the negative 4 by 5. Now we also want to do the other one divided by 5 as well, because we have to divide everything by 5. Negative 30 divided by 5 is negative 6, and you have a calculator to help you with that. What you'll see is that now that we've done that, we have y equals mx plus b. This is something that we can graph much more easily. Our slope is negative 4 over 5, and our y-intercept here would be negative 6. That would be our starting point. So, in 2 easy steps, we have gone from standard form to slope-intercept form. Just a quick recap of what we've done here so far. We started with 4x plus 5y equals negative 30. That's standard form. That's not easy to graph. So we did 2 easy steps. Step number 1, we took the 4x and we moved it to the other side by subtracting it. That's the opposite of plus. So that's why we subtracted 4x and we just simply moved it to the other side of the equal sign. Then, to get rid of our pesky little coefficient, the 5, we divided everything by that coefficient, by the b value. And when we did so, we had a negative 4 over 5x, because this one doesn't simplify. And we had a negative 30 over 5 on the other side, because it did simplify into a very pretty little whole number. That gave us something that we could graph pretty easily. Well, kids, that's pretty much it. Let's do another example to make sure you've got it. Wonder what example we could do. I know, let's look at number 1, the one we skipped earlier. Are you ready, kids? All right, let's go over here and look at number 1. In this case, we still have standard form, 2x plus y equals 3. But this was going to be a little bit easier for us. I'll show you why in a minute. First thing that we always want to do is we want to get the x to the other side. At the end of the day, we're really just solving for y, so in order to do so, we want to move the thing that's furthest away from it. The 2x is furthest away, so we're going to move it using a minus 2x. Since it's positive right now, we're going to do the opposite, minus 2x. Now please notice, write that down, write that down, write that down. Now that you've written this down, please look. 3, negative 2x, not like terms. I can't just do 3 minus 2x is 1x or anything like that. Can't combine them. They're not like terms. I'm just going to put them next to each other. But to keep things consistent and to make my life easier down the road, I'm always going to start with that x term. Because remember, we're going for y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to rewrite this, now that we've got the y down here, as a negative 2x and then the plus 3. I put plus 3 because that 3 is positive. If that 3 were negative, I would have made that a minus 3. Just depends on what's going on. Now, I've only done one step. I haven't quite gotten to that second step where I have to divide by the coefficient. But you should notice that we've already got y equals mx plus b. That's because the coefficient for y is just an invisible 1. So we don't really need to do that second step. This would be like if my voice wasn't working and I clear my throat and it fixed the problem and I didn't even have to go to the second step. Same idea. Sometimes that first step is all we need. Maybe we don't have a coefficient to get rid of, and in this case, we would be good. Isn't that pretty cool? I think so too. I want to do one more example with you, but I want you to give it a try first. I know there's some things on here that are a little bit weird looking, but I want you to go ahead and slide down and look at number 4. We'll skip number 3 for now. Look at number 4 and try it on your own. I'll be back when you finish. Hit pause and complete number 4. Ready, go. And we are back. All right, so I already did number 4, obviously, and so hopefully yours looks something like this, but I'm just going to quickly talk to you about what you hopefully have already done. First, we knew that we needed to move the x to the other side. That's always the first step. Since that's a positive x, I did minus x to both sides. When you do so, you realize these are not like terms, so you put the x first and then the 8 second. Since that 8 was negative, I left it as a negative 8, and since I'm subtracting x, I put it as a negative x. That's why these things are lined up like they are. Now, we're not done yet because we have a negative y. We have to get rid of that negative. The slope-intercept form is not negative y equals mx plus b. It's y equals mx plus b. So to get rid of that negative, the key is to remember that there's really an invisible 1 right there. I'll put a little little ninja green one right there. So you have to remember, that really means -1 times y. And so if we want to get rid of that negative, we just divide everything here by -1. When I do so, dividing by -1 doesn't change any of the numbers, it just changes their signs. So we go from a -x divided by -1, which is a positive x, and we go from a -8 divided by -1, which is a positive 8. So there's my final answer, and hopefully that's yours too. Go ahead and fix it if you need to. Just as a final kind of checkpoint for you before I talk about the last piece to this, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and do numbers 3, 5, and 6, the ones that we skipped. So just hit pause, work on those, and we'll come back and check those answers. Ready, set, go! Here they are. I'll give you a second to look over it, fix things that you need to fix, but hopefully you're getting the hang of it. 2 steps, move the x term, divide by the coefficient, life is good. Take a second to look over these, and then when you're done, we'll move on. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to. And we're back. So go ahead and flip your notes page over to the back. I'm going to skip all the stuff that's on the top. I just don't want to make this video any longer than it already is. It's really, really long. And I should probably do all 3 of these examples for you, but I'm just going to do one so that you get the hang of it, and we'll do more practice throughout the week on the rest of it. There's nothing new about what we're doing. It's just kind of using the skills that we have to kind of answer a different type of question. So this is a really, really common type of question that you're going to see. You will most definitely see this on tests. You'll see this on ACTs. You'll see this on EOCs, all those important, ABC tests that you take, where it's asking you to identify what the equation of that line is, but instead of giving you beautiful y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form equations, it's just giving you standard form equations. So the way that I would typically solve something like this, and of course there are a few other ways that we could do this using intercepts or things like that, but one of the easiest ways to do it is to figure out what the y equals mx plus b form of this line is, and then simply just change all of these to y equals mx plus b until we find the correct answer. So quickly, and we've already done this, is something we did last week. If we look at this line and I were to do the slope-intercept version of it, we would notice, first of all, that it starts at -2. That's its starting point or its y-intercept. So if you go down 2, that's where we find our starting point. So if I were to write a y equals mx plus b form equation, I know that I'm going to be starting at a -2. The only other thing that I would need to know is the slope, the rise over the run. So that's how we find the way to get from that starting point to another point on that line. So I made a point on that line right there. And to get from the blue dot to the red dot, I'm simply going to be going up by 1 and to the right by 3. So that means that my slope is up 1 over 3. So 1 over 3. And then always remember to put in your x. So that right there is the equation of the line. That's something that we should know how to do already. Unfortunately, none of these look like that. So what we want to do is change these using the skills that we just learned to see which one's going to match up to the original answer. So I'm just going to start with the first one here. It says x plus 3y equals -6. And off to the side, I'm going to do my 2 steps that we just learned. First, I'm going to subtract my x from both sides. Remember, we want to move that x term to the other side. And when I do so, I have a 3y equals -x minus 6. Remember, we want to put that x term first and then the constant. Then I'm going to divide by 3 to get rid of that coefficient. And when I do so, I get y equals -1 over 3x minus 2. Now that's really close to what I started with. The -1/3 is the problem, because really I needed a positive 1/3. This would have been a very similar line, but it would have been a line that instead of going up was going down. So that one can't be correct, and we can go ahead and mark it off, because we have something here that's not the same. Then I'm going to move to the second one. X minus 3y equals 6. And I'm going to write this off to the side as well. This is where you may want to use scrap paper or something like that if you're doing this for real. But stay with me, and I think that you'll have enough space to make this one work. So we have x minus 3y equals 6. Same two steps. You're going to move the x and then divide by the coefficient. Hopefully this becomes kind of second nature to you as we continue to do this process over and over and over again. So I have a negative x here, and I have a positive 6 here. The only other step that I have to do is to divide everything by that negative 3, because that's the coefficient of the y. So I'm going to divide everything here by negative 3. And this is going to be interesting because once this goes away, y equals, I have a negative x divided by negative 3. So remember that's like a negative 1x, it's invisible. And negative divided by a negative is a... That's right, it's a positive. Great job. Wonderful. So fantastic. Yeah, it's a positive. So that's going to leave me with a positive 1/3 x. And then the positive divided by the negative is going to still be a negative 2. Now I've got y equals 1/3 x minus 2, which is the same thing that I started with. And that's how I know to choose this one. So whenever you have a multiple choice question like this, use the skills that we already learned. Move the x, divide by the coefficient. Move the x, divide by the coefficient. It's the only two steps that we have to do for all of this. And when we do that, you're just going to see which of these, after we do that process, matches up with what you really wanted it to look like in slope-intercept form. There we go. I should probably do the rest of these, but I'm not gonna. I think you can figure it out because you're so smart. Tune in next time for whenever we learn whatever we're going to learn next. But I think this is a good place to end for our notes part of this. And now you've got some work to do, which I don't remember what that's supposed to be. But it's whatever is on your thing. So do whatever is on your thing and do it well. And if you have questions, ask somebody. It's been real, but I'm out. Bye.